it's almost about safety in your body, right? I'm capable of doing these things. I don't have to feel fear around movement. I'm comfortable moving throughout the day. I really want to encourage people to get to know how their body responds to exercise. Because of all this noise about aesthetics, we haven't been trained to notice these more internal or intrinsic kind of things.
Because it's hard to be a person with a body these days when bonkers TikTok diets are all the rage. And why are the seats so damn small on the airplane? Because it's hard to be a person with a body these days.
You are listening to Burnt Toast. I'm Virginia Soul-Smith. We are on our August hiatus right now, which means it is the time of year that I bring you some favorite episodes from the archives. Stuff you may have missed or that I feel is just especially relevant to where we are in the world right now. Today's episode is a rerun of episode 171. It's an interview with anti-diet personal trainer and health journalist Anna Maltby, also a good friend of mine, which first ran in December 2024 and is our third most downloaded episode ever. You all really loved this conversation. In case you don't already know Anna, she is a health journalist, editor, content strategist, personal trainer, Pilates instructor, and author of the fantastic newsletter, How to Move. She joined me for this episode to bust the myth of visible abs and talk about what actually matters when it comes to so-called core workouts, which can be so very anti-fat and diet-coded. It is August. It is peak swimsuit season. This is a time of year when a lot of us can get in our feelings about our midsections. So if you take away nothing else from this conversation, know this. A pudgy belly can be a strong core. Here's Anna. So last time you were on the podcast, we talked specifically all about how diet culture has co-opted ab workouts. And this was inspired by a viral Twitter thread you wrote back then, back when we were on Twitter, back when we called it Twitter, et cetera, where you really laid out how core muscles are super important, but the way the fitness industry markets ab workouts just completely misses the point. So can you walk us through that a little bit? Because every time I even bring that up with people, like minds are blown.
Yes. So there's so much here, but I think the TLDR is that abs, flat abs, defined abs, visible abs have a real hold on us as a culture. They have forever, unfortunately, and diet culture knows that. So they're going to use this promise of visible abs to get you to buy a bunch of stuff, which is sketchy at best, because for the vast majority of people, those visible defined abs are not necessarily a realistic or at least a sustainable goal. And then, what's frustrating for me is that all of that is kind of a distraction from the many ways in which having strong and functional abs is great for you and can help you move and feel better. So I find it kind of frustrating. I find it self-defeating. It's feeding into diet culture and it's not supporting us in any way.
It really is wild that this very specific aesthetic trait, like the ability to have visible stomach muscles, which only certain body types are going to be able to pull off, even with a lot of effort, right? That has become our focus. Sometimes I just have to take a minute and be like, why do we care so much about how someone's stomach muscles look as opposed to what it does for your body? It's really weird.
For some reason, Botox and forehead wrinkles is popping into my head. And it's as though this is a bad metaphor because your forehead doesn't really do anything for you. But what if your forehead had some amazing function and we were distracting ourselves with the aesthetics of it by spending all this money on Botox?
Yeah, totally.
Adding this whole additional layer of functional purpose on top of, the ridiculousness of the diet salesmanship of it.
You revisited this whole conversation recently on your Substack, How to Move, which I want everyone to subscribe to because it's fantastic. And you wrote a piece that was sort of in conversation with a piece by another fitness writer we both like, Casey Johnston, who wrote a piece called The Core Workout is a Scam. And she pointed out that even major fitness influencers on TikTok will talk about this. They make content with these ab exercises that they actually don't even do themselves, because they know that like abs is what gets engagement. And yeah, this brought me back to some of our Lady Mag days. I don't know about you, Anna. This felt familiar to some of those workouts that we put on magazine covers.
Yes, absolutely. I love Casey. I really admire her work. And I think she's so right that, influencers and whoever else is trying to sell you workouts, they definitely post this kind of like core workout or ab workout, like very intentionally. It's not necessarily that it's a good workout. It's not what the influencer does.
It's not that it's going to achieve that aesthetic, that teeny aesthetic that you're going for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that, you're looking at this influencer, you see their body, you see them post this thing, and you're like, ooh, if I do that thing, I'll get that body.
Yeah.
That's definitely a scam. I think it was kind of wild to see the influencer that Casey included in her piece. I think that she had posted on TikTok, just saying outright, I used to be this very toxic fitness influencer. I posted these ab workouts. It was completely a fake. I never did it. I only posted it for engagement. And, it definitely reminded me of those kind of like, get ripped abs, toned core in 10 days or whatever, those kinds of cover lines that we used to write at magazines. And
the workouts we would write that nobody was doing, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And it's so similar because you would look at this, beautiful, thin, toned, whatever cover model next to these cover lines.
Right.
Did that model or that celebrity or whoever ever do that workout?
No, absolutely not. Even the model in the shoot, like other than posing for the photos, doing the moves, never did the moves.
Yes, she would show up on set looking like that. She would leave set looking like that, and she would never do that workout ever again.
It's just wild. I hope that's the kind of thing that people know, but I don't think it is. It's hard when you look at this content to separate the myth from reality with what you're seeing, even for those of us in the industry. It's hard not to see those workouts and think, okay, is that what works for that? It's so easy to get sucked in.
Yes, I think that we all have that sort of instinct to think that that's going to work. And not all of us have this sort of baked in layer of skepticism or even knowledge that, no, that's not what's actually going on.
Right.
I thought Casey's piece was really interesting. This idea, ab workouts are a scam. She's a big fan, of course, of heavy lifting and barbell focused workouts. And I definitely am too. I love barbells. I love lifting as heavy as I can, although I personally don't use barbells as much as I would really like to these days. And Casey suggests that if you're doing those kinds of workouts, you're getting plenty of core work. And I think that is probably true. Like if you're doing a really heavy deadlift with a barbell, like your core is working really hard to support your spine during that movement. Even just carrying those plates and lifting them up to put them on the bar, like the twisting, like all of that is really amazing functional core work. But I also think like most people are not doing those kinds of workouts.
No, I mean, that's not a very accessible workout for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think that even if you are doing strength exercises with lighter weights at home, you're probably getting some core work as well, but it's not necessarily like all the core work you could ever need in the world. So I'm kind of thinking of Casey's piece with like a little bit of caveat. It's like, yes, if you're doing all that stuff, you're probably golden, great. Probably most people are not doing that stuff. Probably you could benefit from more. And I also think that even if you are someone doing like a heavy barbell workout, there's still a chance you could benefit from a little bit of additional core work. And I'm not talking about the scammy influencer 20-minute ab workouts. I'm talking about some very functional core focused strengthening movements, which can also like help make your lifts better. So, I kind of take it with a grain of salt. Like basically anything that bills itself as a core workout, you could probably raise an eyebrow to, but I don't think that it's true that core exercises across the board are worthless.
No, it's that they've been marketed for the wrong purpose. They have all this value in terms of building functional core strength, but they're sold to us as weight loss, visible six-pack, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's the scam part, is like putting all your focus on that aesthetic goal that's going to be out of reach no matter how many core exercises you do versus the strength building part and the like function part. So let's drill into that a little bit more. Like, what do you think really is the value of core workouts? And on behalf of my people who have always hated core exercises, what are some ways you can reframe how you think about core strength so it doesn't feel like, oh God, that's the part of the workout I hate the most, if you're someone who has that reaction?
Yes, totally. So I guess two parts of this question. One is, what is it for? I'll just quote Casey's piece because I thought this was really smart. The whole point of a core, she says, is that it needs to be able to connect and coordinate the other parts of the body in order to be effective. Cores can't learn to be the solid, coordinating central conduit for movement by doing, for instance, a 5-minute plank alone. And that's the end of the quote. It's all part of a system. Like, the point of a core is not just to be strong in isolation. It's to be strong in a way that supports movement throughout the rest of your body, whether it's lying down in a bed and then getting back up out of that bed, or picking up something heavy, or holding something heavy in one hand and something light in the other hand, and not getting completely out of whack and off balance. So, whether you're building that strength by doing sort of like a heavy barbell workout like Casey likes to do, or something more like Pilates, which I teach, and we're always loading your core by moving the extremities in different ways. Those are both like great examples of this whole thing working as a system.
Just as you're saying that, I'm realizing how much the like core as isolated thing is, again, part of the diet culture. Like, it's more about the aesthetics and not about the function.
Exactly. The way that I think about Pilates, to me, it doesn't make sense to do a workout like that all the time. It makes sense to do it maybe once or twice a week as a foundation to the other things that you're doing. Because if you can make your core, your pelvic floor, your back muscles work really functionally in tandem with the rest of your body, then the other kinds of movements that you're doing throughout the week, whether it's something like a workout or dancing or walking, or just, like I have a client who owns a bookstore. So she's like picking up heavy boxes and putting things away on a shelf and reaching and taking things up and down stairs. It's going to support all of those other things. So it's a really helpful thing to do. It's not that you need to do it every single day,
Yeah.
I will say though, when I see something that's like a core workout is a scam, it's bad, it's garbage, it's a waste of time, I kind of cringe about that a little bit because, there are definitely lots of people who don't enjoy a core workout and it's not their thing. No shade at all. But there's also people who really love it and who enjoy it. Yes. And there's whatever the class is at their gym that's like 20-minute abs class. Do they need to be doing that? Is it like completely necessary? Maybe not. But if they really like it and it gets them active and it gets them feeling good in their body, like, keep doing it. You don't have to stop.
We're not here to shame anyone who loves a 20-minute ab class. I am fascinated by you, but I respect that you have that preference.
I don't want to make people feel bad about what they're doing, because the most important thing is to do something, right? Is to find something that you can do and that you can sustain. So let's open your mind to other ways of moving that might be supportive in other ways, but like, let's also not get disheartened because we're seeing that this is like not the perfect way to exercise or whatever.
Totally. And I'll also just share, as someone who really does identify as hating core work, I have come to appreciate it so much more through doing your workouts, through talking to you about it, because it's made me realize how much the like I hate core workouts came from I'm never going to have the visible six-pack, and being able to put that down and not have that be part of it anymore. Now I do notice, when I get my core properly like turned on and engaged, my back hurts so much less. Just like taking the giant bag of dog food in from the curb feels like less painful. There is so much in your day-to-day functioning that's impacted. And once you start to tune into those but they're often quite small, just like this little, I got off the floor a lot more easily after giving my 7-year-old a bath. Like small things that are really not that small, actually.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's almost about like safety in your body, right? Like, I'm capable of doing these things. I don't have to feel fear around movement. I'm comfortable moving throughout the day. There's so much to be said for that. And I think, you say they're small things, but they're not really small. I think that's so important. I really want to encourage people to get to know how their body responds to exercise. Because of all this noise about aesthetics, we haven't been trained to notice these more internal or intrinsic kind of things. But if you can tap into functional changes or just how you feel moving through the day, are you waking up a little less creaky? Are you able to pick that thing up? Or are you able to bend down into the, bath to whatever, more comfortably?
Shampoo a moving 7-year-old.
Shampoo, absolutely.
Quite a core workout.
Wrestle them into their jackets and all that stuff. It's really intense. But those things, and again, this kind of goes back to the central question, why is the myth of visible abs so frustrating? Is there's so many other things that, not just abs, but a functional and strong body can do for you. To me, those things are better motivators. We talked about this
100%.
last time. I exercise also because of back pain. What got me started on exercise and got me sticking with exercise was that I was throwing my back out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that a whole lot less if I'm active regularly. And that's a really good motivator. And it is achievable and it's noticeable. And I get punished if I'm not doing it because my back hurts.
Yep.
So,
yep. It's a real, real one-to-one connection.
I think, this conversation about the core and abs, we have to also talk about people who do need core specific exercises, which, it's a bit more of a sort of rehabilitation focus, but that might include people who are recovering from an injury or surgery, and especially people who are recovering from childbirth, whether that's a vaginal birth or a C-section. A pretty functional body who's not in that situation, they'll get really great core work from whatever else they're doing, chances are. But in these situations, I do think that isolating your core and targeting your core muscles from a rehabilitative standpoint is really important. And I think those of us who are listening who've had a baby at home, a brand new baby that they gave birth to, have probably had that experience of oh my God, where are my abs? Where is my core? I can't do anything. They've left the building and it's temporary. It's okay. They will be back. You need to heal. You need to recover. But it's kind of funny because you'll get maybe the advice that you shouldn't lift anything heavier than, 5 or 10 pounds, or, don't pick up anything heavy, try not to do anything until you've had more time to heal. But when you have a new baby at home, you're picking up and putting down a 7, 8, 9, 10 and growing weight.
Plus in a car seat. Yeah.
Yeah. 75 times a day. And I just remember nursing in bed and then trying to get up out of the bed while holding the baby. And you're basically doing a sit-up, a weighted sit-up.
Yep.
It's brutal. So brutal. It's really challenging. And it's not realistic to say you can't do any of that stuff until you've rehabilitated your core. You need to be able to live your life. But I think that working with rehabilitative exercises as you're working through your day-to-day life, it's going to make it easier. You're going to get better. You're going to start to heal. You're going to regain that strength so much better than if you're just kind of not doing any of the rehab and only doing the sort of demands of daily life. I want to say, if you're in that situation, and I think this is also true if you've had some kind of abdominal or pelvic or hip surgery and you're recovering and you have to have that rest period, rehabilitative exercises can be really, really supportive.
What I'm thinking as you're talking too is how all of these benefits we're talking about have absolutely nothing to do with weight loss. This isn't about, are you losing the baby weight? This isn't about anything to do with that. And yet, again, because of the way diet culture trains us to think about core in the past, if I wasn't losing weight, I wasn't aware of these benefits. It was harder to tune into these benefits. Or if I did notice these benefits, I credited them with any weight loss that was happening. But really, that's its own separate thing. Whether your weight changes or not from exercise is we could just put that over here. It might happen, it might not. And the core stuff is you can achieve that whether or not the weight changes. And I just want to name that because I think that's another place this gets so tangled.
Yes, I think that's so important. There's a wonderful perinatal coach named Jessie Mundell, who I'm a huge fan of. She takes a super inclusive approach and She's in a larger body. I think I texted you when I did her postpartum certification
Oh, yeah.
program. And I was like, Virginia, there's fitness models in this program that are in larger bodies. It's so helpful. It's amazing.
So helpful.
It exists. And she likes to say that, and I'm going to get the exact words wrong, but it's something like, you can have a round, pudgy, poochy, cellulite, diastasis recti belly, and a functional core.
Yes.
The aesthetics do not predict the functionality.
Yes. God, that's so helpful. It's so important. And I think people just, especially if you have the diastasis or the Poochie belly, like you just think, well, that's it. I will never have a strong core. And that can just be defeating to even starting with this kind of exercise. So important to name. So important.
Yeah. I mean, there are elite athletes who are competing with a 3 or 4 finger diastasis.
The other piece of this you touched on a little bit is the back pain piece. And I love to talk about back pain because it's one of my personal hobbies. And key personality traits.
I don't love that for you, but yes, yeah.
Well, it's becoming much less of a hobby, but for a long time it was. But also, I just think back pain is so common, and especially in our demographic, whether you're post-kids or just, perimenopause, whatever. Like, there's a lot of back pain in our world. And it has absolutely blown my mind as I've been doing your workouts, and I do Lauren Lavelle's strength training, and, switching into heavier weights, not barbells, but, going from like 10 pounds to 20 pounds. My back is having so many fewer problems, and I don't get it, Anna. I don't get it because, like you were saying, we're told, like, don't lift heavy things, be so careful. And I, for so long, had this narrative of myself as like, oh, my back goes out all the time, so I'm like kind of fragile and need to be really careful. But that turns out to be a lie. So please just explain that.
Okay, I'm going to go deep here. So stay with me.
Okay, I'm ready.
So some of this is coming from Anna the trainer, but a lot of this is coming from Anna the journalist and Anna the content strategist who works at a physical therapy company. So I spend a lot of time with physical therapists. And there's this interesting concept in the physical therapy world called movement optimism. And it gets at what you're saying, which is like, maybe moving your body is a better approach for dealing with pain than avoiding movement, and reframing movement as positive and supportive versus the idea like this movement is safe, this movement is unsafe, is generally a more helpful approach. I think there can be so much fear around movement for people. And I think a lot of people with chronic pain, recurring injuries, even like a history of body trauma can start to think of themselves as weak and fragile and think of movement as something they really need to be careful about. And while it may be true that like, okay, a certain type of movement maybe was sort of the catalyst for the pain that you're experiencing, pain is so much more complex than many of us realize. I'm going to credit 2 PTs here that I've interviewed recently about this. Dylan Peterson in California and Ann Nwabwebo in DC. Those interviews are going to be on my Substack soon, hopefully. But yes, full disclosure, I'm not a DPT. This is like a DPT level conversation. But I'm going to walk through some of what I've talked to them about. So it's not just, again, it's not that just that physical trauma of the injury itself that is contributing to your pain. First, there's a huge emotional or psychological element. We know that we hold stress and tension in many parts of our body. Like for a lot of us, it's like our neck, our shoulders, our jaw, pelvic floor, hips. Plus,
maybe all of those.
All of the above, absolutely. There's also a big link between things like anxiety, depression, PTSD, and aches and pains. And which way it goes could be either way, right?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, makes sense.
Then there's postural issues. So we know that the way that we carry ourselves or sit or stand or move can contribute to pain, tension, discomfort in our bodies. Next, there's inflammation and inflammatory conditions, whether it's like a GI condition or even something like endometriosis or fibroids. Those conditions can contribute to or just even be related to greater inflammation throughout the body. Our muscles and soft tissues can respond accordingly. And then finally, there's this concept called central sensitization, which is a bit of a mouthful. Central sensitization, which it basically means our bodies have experienced pain in the past. And so they almost go into overdrive, trying to protect us from future damage by sending us these pain signals, even when our body isn't in any real danger. It's like our brain is really trying to help us, but it's like going too far and causing pain where we're not actually like causing tissue damage with that movement. So first of all, of course, if our muscles are stronger, more mobile, better able to provide us stability in those places where we've had pain before, whether it's your back, a hip, a knee, we'll theoretically be able to move through that area with less discomfort. And that's where like those really targeted exercises like you do in physical therapy can come in. There's this phrase the PTs I work with use that goes, motion is lotion. So I kind of love that.
Yeah.
But then if you think back to all those other factors we just talked about, tension, stress, posture, sensitization, inflammation, we know that movement can be really supportive for all of those things. And, movement helps with stress and tension. Movement helps with mental health. Movement might help you with the way you're holding yourself. Movement can help you reduce inflammation. And then even that sensitization concept, that one is a little bit maybe harder to wrap your head around if you haven't thought about it too much. But, movement, exercise can allow us to sort of like gently nudge into that pain and then tell our brain, hey, this movement isn't dangerous. You can back off with the pain. I'm okay doing this. You don't have to send those signals quite as strong as you've been sending them.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So it's like exercise. Yes, ideally it's going to strengthen and improve mobility, which should reduce pain, but it can improve all of these other factors as well. I do want to say something specifically about back pain though, because back pain is tricky. And I want to go back to that Casey Johnston article that we were talking about. She notes correctly that there's a sort of widespread idea that like core work is the answer to back pain. We've all heard that like, if your back hurts, probably your core is weak. It can be true. It isn't necessarily true. The research is a little surprising because it seems to find that like pretty much all kinds of exercise are helpful for back pain. So core exercises can certainly improve pain and support posture if you have chronic low back pain. So it's not necessarily that, again, that people are wrong by saying you need to do core work. But Casey is right that core work is not the only way. There's some really interesting research that says core exercises, strength training, and even aerobic exercise all have similar benefits for back pain.
Oh, wow.
Which, tells me it's basically like, again, movement optimism. It's better to move your body
just move
for back
somewhere.
pain than not move your body. And it almost doesn't matter what you're doing. I think it's sort of like really goes back to pain being multifactorial, and exercise kind of no matter what you're doing can really support all of those factors.
So just to drill in a little deeper for folks who struggle with this, if you're in like an acute flare-up of back pain, we're not saying go lift a 40-pound weight, but the idea that, because I'm someone who gets acute back pain, I shouldn't do this type of movement, that's what we're trying to kind of push back against.
Yes, exactly. And I think in the moment of acute back pain, there are things that you can tap into here, things like trying to stay as relaxed as you can, taking deep breaths, even just telling yourself, I'm okay, it's okay, I don't have to be scared, I'll get through this. Like those kinds of messages can actually be really powerful.
Totally.
But it can be really hard to navigate like, okay, I know I should move. What does that actually mean? What can I do? What should I do? I don't want to overdo it. And I totally understand that. And I think that is, I'll say semi-unfortunately, where a PT comes in, because I know PT can be hard to access. But
it's a game changer when you can find a good PT. Yeah.
If you can find a good PT, it is super helpful, and they can help you navigate the do's and don'ts. And again, I don't really want to frame movement as safe versus unsafe, but just how reduced does your pain need to be for you to start pushing into it a little bit, nudging into that pain. I think there's sort of scales of 1 to 10 that PTs will use. Okay, if you're an 8 to 10, probably just resting, taking some deep breaths, maybe some very gentle stretches is the way to go. But then beyond that, they'll give you some guidance for how much to try and how far to go.
Makes total sense.
But I do think just generally reframing you know, rest may not be best. Movement may be supportive.
Mm-hmm.
That can be really helpful.
Yeah, it is so helpful. And again, it just feels like one of those things that you're like, well, I've just been told this backwards. I think it comes back to the way we're taught to equate movement with body size and shape as opposed to function, and how that underserves us in so many ways. Any other fun fitness trends, myths, anything else that you're like, could we please be done with this already, that you want to talk about before we wrap up?
I don't know if it's fun.
Can also be terrible.
I mean, it's a sneaky one, but this is something I've been thinking a lot lately. There's sort of the social media trend that we touched on a little bit that I cringe about, that I think of as like kind of the actually trend, which is basically experts, whether they're like self-styled experts or legitimate experts, kind of going around and letting you know that like everything you've heard about X or Y is wrong.
Oh,
these exercises are garbage. If you're not doing these exercises, you're wasting your time. Anyone who says this is wrong. And I think that like, this is generally well-intentioned. I know where it comes from because I sometimes get that instinct myself. Like I see bad information and I'm like, ooh, I want to correct this. I want to go out there and say, actually, this is wrong. But I think what it results in, especially when we're talking about specific modalities of exercise, is confusion and discouragement for people. Because if somebody is doing an activity that they like or they feel proud about doing, and somebody is like kind of shitting on it, then, you know, it can make them feel really like unconfident, less optimistic about movement, less sure of themselves.
Is it worth doing? Yeah. Am I wasting my time?
And it's sort of like the abs thing in that it like leaves people kind of vulnerable. Maybe they're more likely to buy something or hit subscribe because they're like, oh, I thought this was right, but it's wrong.
Oh, I think it's 100% diet culture. Even though I see anti-diet creators doing it too sometimes, like what I think it's rooted in is diet culture. The whole business model is telling you that you can't be right about any of this. Like you don't know how to eat. You don't know how to move your body. You need to invest in this other system that's going to tell you all the rules. And so it's very much that same model of like everything you thought about this was wrong. And now we're going to tell you the right way to have a body. It also just undercuts people's own ability to be authorities on their own bodies.
Exactly. And that's what my work comes down to. I want people to have the tools that they need to like feel more confident and more capable moving.
Yeah.
And I get that instinct. It's a very cliquey concept, but I don't want to get followers or subscribers because people are feeling like really unsure of themselves or shamed or confused. And I feel like I'm constantly saying, don't let what's optimal get in the way of what's sustainable. Like I feel like I say that in every newsletter. What I mean by that is like, yes, of course, it's really important to look at research and listen to experts and know like what's effective, what's most supportive of our well-being. But there's also kind of a limit to that because when it comes to exercise, most people aren't doing it. Like most people aren't doing it at all. And people who are doing it aren't doing like technically enough of it. I think there's a stat that like about 75% of adults do not meet physical activity guidelines. And it's really hard. It's really hard to do. Like no one has the time or energy to exercise. Parents or caregivers, like, you know, all these systemic, you know, supports that we don't have in our culture, like it's really hard to take care of yourself. So in my view, I want to share messages about like helping people get active and stay active, period, in whatever way will allow them to just keep doing it. And there's like, some things that are going to be more important for heart health and bone density and all those other good things. But like the important thing is to move. Moving is better than not moving. If you can do a little bit more movement than you were before, that's good. Whatever is going to allow you to do it long term. So I don't want to actually people.
I love that. I'll often get reader questions like, do we really need to do, you know, the whatever many minutes per week of movement, whatever those gold standards are? And every time I look into it, it's sort of like, well, sure, there's some research to support it, but if nobody can achieve a gold standard in their life, then how is that useful? Like, how is that relevant to anybody? Should be focused on making whatever we can make doable for folks.
Exactly. Yeah. I also think that the actually thing can lead to like some very confusing trends. And one good example of this, I think, is the Kegel backlash.
Like people started to hate Kegels for some reason.
Exactly. And
So
it's
odd.
and it's so like, why did we swing so far the other way?
Why did we get so militantly against Kegels?
Yeah. I mean, I think like, we've made a lot of leaps and bounds in the last couple of decades in pelvic health, both in terms of like the knowledge that we have, the practitioners that are available, and like just like the stigma has kind of gone away. Like you can talk about pelvic health and your symptoms and whatever, which is all great. But it used to be that the main pelvic floor condition anyone knew about was like stress incontinence, which came from weak pelvic floor muscles. And so you would get Kegels, like do your Kegels. That was just like the blanket. If you have a pelvic floor problem, you need to do Kegels. And now we've made a lot of progress. We know that some conditions, especially like urinary urgency, pelvic pain, often stem from too much pelvic floor tension, which means Kegels could backfire and worsen those symptoms.
Okay. So I get some of the resistance to Kegels if they've been underserving folks.
And it's very important to get that knowledge out there because like you don't want to make those symptoms worse. But then you get this like telephone effect where like just Kegels are bad. No one should be doing them. Anyone who mentions Kegels doesn't know what they're talking about, which is also not true. Like the pelvic floor, just like other musculoskeletal conditions, it's multifactorial. The idea like this is good, this is bad, I know what you need. Like it always needs to be taken with a grain of salt. But when it comes to the pelvic floor, especially, like the only person who really knows what your pelvic floor needs is a DPT, like a pelvic floor PT or OT who has done an assessment on you. The real message should be pelvic floor symptoms are treatable. You need to see a specialist to deal with them.
That's really helpful. That is so interesting. I think it is just another example of how the diet culture framing and just the marketing gets mixed in with the message. When content creators are selling a course or selling whatever, it's just hard to separate that from, they may have some really good information to share, but if they're leaning into that, like actually everything you thought was wrong mindset, like that's the marketing, that's probably not entirely true. And that's helpful for us all to keep in mind. All right. Any other trends or other like fitness motifs on your mind that you want to tell us about?
There's something that I think is really tricky, which is this concept of movement feeling good. This idea that like, you should find movement that feels great or that you feel joyful doing, which, I think is a lovely concept. And I think people have really good intentions when they say this kind of thing. I think it's really helpful to an extent, especially if you're someone who's working on building a more positive, like less punishing relationship with exercise. Tapping into something that you actually like feel good doing and what helps your body feel good can be super helpful. But there's a couple of caveats to this that I think are important. One is that for some people, movement generally does not feel good, whether they have chronic pain, they've experienced trauma, they have a disability or some kind of illness, or for many other reasons, like exercise may not ever be something that feels good or joyful to them. And so this idea that that's what you need to do can kind of exclude a lot of people. It may be that like you're in that boat and you can still get a lot of benefits from finding movement that you can kind of tolerate consistently, but you may be better off like not trying to adhere to this idea that like it has to feel amazing. It might just be kind of like the pill you got to swallow.
It's okay, but not great. Yeah. There's something very ableist, as you're saying this, about like movement should be joyful. Like that's just not going to be true for everybody. Ableist and also just personal preference. Like I'm just someone who would rather, like it's more joyful to read a book on the couch.
I do think if you're in that boat where you have some sort of condition where movement feels very uncomfortable, it can really help to find some guidance. And there are specialty certification programs for trainers who get extra knowledge in certain conditions. So look it up. I wish I could give you a really specific resource, but it's very condition specific, I think. Try to get a little help, like whether it's an online program or a trainer that you can work with, even just for a couple of sessions, just to say like, everything kind of feels bad. I know I need to move. What's the bare minimum that I need to do, or what can I do? The other big caveat for me as a trainer of like movement should always feel wonderful and joyful and good is that if you're looking to make gains in terms of like muscle mass, bone density, cardiovascular health, like it can be very helpful to like get comfortable with discomfort. Like you are gonna need to push yourself I have recently started presenting like a monthly strength training workout, and I want people to engage in progressive overload where each week they add, maybe not each week, hopefully each week, it depends on the person, but maybe they add a little bit of weight. They're able to do a little more. The only way you can really do that is if you push, and by the end of your set, your muscles are kind of shaking and you can like barely finish that final couple of reps. That is where you get stronger. I talk about this a lot because I'm not a big cardio person, and I really should be. We all should be probably doing cardio, even though it sucks. No shade if you're a cardio lover. But if you want to improve your resting heart rate, your VO2 max, those markers of cardiovascular wellness, like you also need to do a progressive training approach where you're pushing yourself to, whether it's run or walk or bike or whatever, a little faster, a little farther. You need to keep kind of loading your cardiovascular system and challenging yourself so that you can see those improvements that you're looking for. So, that might not always feel very good. But I do think it goes back to like what we were talking about earlier, noticing what are the other improvements that you feel throughout the day. Maybe your workout feels like, oh my God, that kind of sucked. That was really hard. I was struggling. I was quaking, all that stuff. But maybe it's like later that day, you notice you've got a little bit more energy, a little more pep in your step. You're carrying yourself a little bit differently. Whatever you can do to tap into those benefits of how you feel as a result of the workout and build that connection, that's what's going to help you understand that sort of momentary discomfort is worth it. So I never want people to like go into it being like, I'm going to punish myself. I'm going to work so hard because I have to, because I am, I need to make up for something, none of that. That's not what I'm talking about. But, should every workout feel wonderful? I'm not sure. I don't think so.
I'm doing your strength training progressive workouts. And there's something you said about like, maybe as you're lifting heavier weights, this move that we're doing for a minute will only be a 45-second move for you because it's like so hard to finish. That was really helpful to my brain because I think those of us with a lot of good girl perfectionist conditioning, sometimes I'm like, I can only do the workout if I can do it right, like quote, right. And so then that keeps me from pushing myself more. Do you know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, I need to be able to execute this flawlessly somehow. And the idea that part of progress is like, it might be harder and a little messy was really helpful for me to understand that it's not like a failing if it's getting harder.
Yes, exactly. And I think there's so many levers we can pull to make things a little bit more challenging, whether it's the position, the weight, the speed, the length of the set. There's a lot of different ways to make things more challenging. And, this goes back to Pilates and something I talk about a lot there, which is like, you don't have to do the hardest possible version of an exercise to get something out of it. And in fact, for most people, I would say, definitely myself included, I'm not going to choose the hardest version of every exercise because I'm forcing it and I'm not necessarily using the muscles that I'm supposed to be using because I'm compensating. Whether it's I'm using my neck muscles to lift my head instead of my abdominals or whatever it might be. Maybe some of the progressive overload that you're doing in a strength training context is I'm starting with a different version of the exercise that allows me to complete the movement, and maybe I work my way up to a slightly different version of the exercise. But there's going to be a little discomfort there. Like you're not going to get there without experiencing some positive, productive discomfort.
Yes. I just love how much nuance you bring to all of these conversations. And I think for all of us who are trying to engage with movement, but divesting from all of this like gold standard diet culture kind of one right way to do it talk, like the amount of nuance you bring to this is just tremendously valuable. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
All right, Anna, do you have a butter for us today?
Okay. Yes, I have 2 butters.
Yay. I love multiple butters.
I had to look up the name of these things because they're just these little adhesive rubbery dots that you can stick on like a cabinet or like a door frame or even a toilet to make things close silently.
Oh, so your children can't slam the toilet lid up and down all the time?
Yes.
Wow. What a world.
Some places call them cabinet bumpers or door buffer pads or sound dampening door buffers.
Wow.
So it's both like if your kid goes to the bathroom in the middle of the night, it's not going to wake you up because they're like slamming the toilet seat.
Totally.
So that's amazing. But then also just like, I even notice if I'm closing a door or lifting the toilet lid or whatever during the day and it's just silent. I think I'm a little bit of a sensitive person to sound and stimulation.
Yeah.
And so having those just like little tiny experiences throughout the day be very quiet is so calming. It's very nice.
That's delightful. That's such a good butter.
And I always have to say, I don't love Amazon. So if you can go to your like local hardware store or dollar store, I bet they'll have them. And then the other thing that has been really bringing me joy lately is I'm so much more into like holiday decor now that I have children than I ever was before.
Yep.
I have like a little flock of bats taking off from the top of my TV during Halloween season.
Yeah.
And they're so delightful. And I just took them down and the wall was looking very sad. So I started making paper snowflakes with my daughter. And I hadn't done that since I was a kid. So I had to Google, like, how do you make a paper snowflake?
Yeah,
like, how do you fold the thing and cut it? And I discovered that there's all these little patterns and I'm not crafty at all, but it will show you, here's the little folded triangle and here's the little pattern to draw on it. And then you cut it out, like that. And it will make this beautiful, amazing shape. So being not crafty at all, I find this so satisfying. So now we have like a little growing snowstorm above our TV of like DIY snowflakes.
That's delightful. We did that one year and put them all over our front window. And I'm like, why did we stop doing that? We should do that again. That was really fun.
It's very cheap and fun.
Yeah, and magical. And like you can do 5 or you can do 50. Like you can like stop whenever. Like it's very imperfect craft. You can just kind of do what moves you, which I love.
Yeah. I have I have 5 minutes after I finished cleaning up the kitchen and I'm just going to make a snowflake just for fun. It's cute. It's not like me at all. And I like that too.
All right. It's interesting you brought up toilets because I'm going to bring up toilets as well.
Oh, delightful.
I have a very practical better that's really, really a PSA, which is if you are a household that currently has a toilet plunger, I don't want to, actually you, but you can throw it in the garbage. No, you can keep it if you want. But what you really need is a toilet snake. This has changed my life as I'm going to just put my children on blast. They use an excessive amount of toilet paper, like truly excessive. We have tried many strategies for I've used guilt about climate change. Like, I'm like, you're killing the trees. But they are excessive toilet paper users. So clogging toilets is something that happens with some frequency in my house. And, then I was like, okay, I'm going to start charging you guys for the plumber visits because plumbers are not cheap. And like, I would try plunging. It wouldn't work. I finally bought this toilet snake off Amazon, but absolutely get it at your hardware store. It was like $30. And it's so much more effective than a plunger for breaking up a clogged toilet, like game changer. And it's weirdly satisfying to use too, I have to say.
Wow. I'm not going to leverage it. Like that's a little gross, but
it's
I'm
super
really
gross.
Happy for you.
I maybe should have included a content warning on this better.
I feel very lucky. I've never had to plunge a toilet. Maybe we have really good toilets.
Well, I do not, I can tell you. The last plumber who came to my house was like, your toilets are terrible and wanted to replace all of them. And I was like, or I could spend several $100s replacing all my toilets, probably like, I don't know, $1,000 or something. Or I could buy this $30 toilet snake. It's this long metal coil thing and it snakes down into the drain. So it's actually less gross to use than a plunger too. I'm sorry, We're really like in it now. Okay, content warning to everybody. I'll put something at the top of the show about this. But like you stand further back so there's not like the splashing concerns and you just like turn the handle on the snake. You get it all the way down and you turn the handle and it just like burrows its way through the clog. I don't know how it does it, but it does it. And it's less gross to me to use than a toilet plunger and weirdly satisfying. So that is what I have to say.
A lot of toilet optimization today.
Yeah.
It's an important thing.
It is.
Your toilet needs to work for you.
It's something we're dealing with all the time, especially as parents. Kids and toilets are like a kind of a nightmare combination sometimes. They're just not great at it. All right, that's probably the grossest butter I've ever given, but here we are. It was time. And I felt like you were someone I could do it with.
We got to talk about it.
We're making your toilets silent and unclogged. And really, that's all I want out of a toilet. So
heaven.
All right. Well, thank you for indulging that. This was so much fun. Tell folks where they can find you and how we can support your work.
I am on Substack at howtomove.substack.com. I also just recently started a public Instagram for that, which is _howtomove. My personal Instagram is really only for people I know. So don't be offended if I don't accept your follow request. I'm a little shy about it, but you can follow me on Substack. You can follow me on Instagram at _howtomove, because
Amazing.
How to Move was taken.
Of course it was. We will link all of that. Anna, thank you so much for being here. This was really delightful.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Burnt Toast. If you'd like to support the show, please subscribe for free in your podcast player and tell a friend about this episode and leave us a rating or review. All of this goes such a long way to helping more people find the podcast and find these conversations. You can also consider a paid subscription to the Burnt Toast newsletter. It's just $7 a month or $70 for the year. You get a ton of great perks. You get behind paywalled episodes and essays, all the good stuff. And you can do that by clicking the link in your episode description or go to virginiasoulsmith.substack.com. The Burnt Toast podcast is produced and hosted by me, Virginia Soul Smith, and Corinne Fay. Follow me on Instagram at @v_soulsmith. You can follow Corinne at Sell Trade Plus, an Instagram account where you can buy and sell plus-size clothing. And subscribe to Big Undies at bigundies.substack.com. The Burnt Toast logo is by Deanna Lowe. Our theme music is by Faraday, and Tommy Heron is our audio engineer. Thanks for listening and supporting anti-diet, body liberation journalism.